video you're about to watch is a third in a series that we filmed while building our second RV. It's meant for entertainment purposes only, and not an absolute how-to, or to show how an airplane has to be built, but only how we build ours. Important to remember, though, whenever we're working on your airplane, use the proper safety equipment and adhere to all safety notices on your power equipment. Before we get started, however, we thought you'd like to see some of the people that are behind the RV movement, and we'll look at those right now. Larry Vetterman builds exhaust systems. When he gets the tubes back from the vendors, he starts marking and cutting them. He marks them with the jigs that he's made himself, so he gets the cuts exactly the way he likes them. Each piece is then cut independently, and then are deburred on all the edges. Slip joints are placed on the end of the pipes. This helps to keep the pipes from breaking. The slip joints are made exactly to Larry's specifications, and he even checks them on a scale. Next, the flanges are fitted on to the ends of the pipes and are marked so he knows whether they move or not. From there, he starts jigging up the number 4 cylinder on a jig made out of an old engine. Clamps are put in place so the pipes can't move on the jig. Once Larry's satisfied with the position of the pipe, he goes ahead and welds it with his TIG welder. There's what a pretty TIG weld looks like. The pipe is then put back on the engine, and Larry repositions the engine now so he can work on the number 3 cylinder. The pipe for the number 3 cylinder with the slip joint in place is placed in the jig. Larry now scribes a mark where the pipe coming off the number 4 cylinder will be cut to allow the number 3 pipe to be welded on. Once the hole's cut out in the pipe, we're ready to weld the number 3 pipe onto the assembly. His jig can rotate in all directions. Once the pipe is in place, he then TIG welds the pipes together. Next, the ball joint is cut into the pipes. This allows movement of the end of the pipe so you can adjust it to fit your own airplane. Once the process is repeated for the number 1 and 2 cylinders, there's a brand new exhaust system ready to be mounted on an airplane. And that's Larry Vetterman. Avery Enterprises in Fort Worth, Texas sells us the tools we need to build our airplanes. When you enter the front door, you'll see his showcases and his display cases of all the tools that we need. In the back, Judy's mom is pulling the parts that people just ordered, and the kids are packing them up ready for shipping. And where's Bob? He's either upstairs in his office talking on the phone or working on his computer, or down in the shop making rivet tools. Everybody helps in the assembly of the rivet tools once the components are all made. Bushings are reamed out. And then final adjustment is made just before package and shipping out. And that's Avery Enterprises. We start the construction of our fuselage, just like they say in the book, by constructing our fuselage jig. Now we choose to use a wooden fuselage jig. Matter of fact, this will be the third airplane built on this jig. Now they do make some nice metal jigs that you can purchase from some manufacturers, but they're really not necessary. You can do a good job with a nice wooden jig. Basically the jig, as you can see here, is basically like a ladder. It's got side rails made out of 2x6s, and then it's got some crosswise braces that are made out of 2x4s, and these will be used to clamp your bulkheads to. In the instructions, they show you a very specific drawing of this jig, and it's fairly easy to construct. Once the jig is constructed, you want to level it. You want to level it side by side and end to end, but don't be too concerned if your cross pieces are off a little bit. You can always shim them. If they're off a 32nd or a 16th of an inch, you can put a little shim between the bulkhead and the brace to get it all in line. It is a good idea, however, to get your wood and let it set and dry for a while. You don't want to construct your jig and then have the wood start drying and warp during construction. So it's a good idea to get your wood and let it dry and start with good dry wood. Now we'll show you from the side here a little bit and give you a little better angle of the jig. Here's a little bit of a side view of the jig. The jig's rather large, so it's hard to get a whole view of the jig in. But you can see the construction of the 2x4s here and the 2x4 making sort of an L beam, and that's per the instructions, and the 2x6s. Now if you can see on the ends of my 2x4 here, there's a little piece of duct tape. What we've done is checked the measurements of all these pieces, and where they were off, we made a notation that this side was off a 16th of an inch. The reason for the duct tape, like I said, this is the third airplane, so it's starting to get kind of scribbled on there. Everybody's putting their own little notes. You can usually look around for other RV builders that may have a jig that's perfectly good and ready to go. So rather than rushing out and investing in lumber or a metal jig, you may want to check and see if you can find one of these. Once the jig is up and all leveled out, then the next thing you do is start on your bulkheads, and we start with the firewall. The firewall of an RV6 or 6A is a fairly complicated structure. There's over 40 components to it. Putting these components together can be a little tricky because some of them are rather small components. We figured out a little method of doing this that hopefully will help you. It's helped us. You start with your 601A stainless steel firewall, and what we've done is placed it on top of some boards, which are then on top of some 2x4s. This lifts it up, gives us a nice solid workspace that we can drill and cleco into, but it also allows us to get clamps around the edge to clamp components down. This comes in handy. Before we start, we mark a center line, top to bottom. We also mark a top line right here, and that's per the plans. Then from the center line out each side, we mark 4 inches to give us an 8-inch area, and that's per the plans. Then we start assembling or building our preliminary structure. We start with the bottom piece of angle that goes on here. Now this is 3/4, 3/4, 1/8 inch angle. Not all the pieces are 1/8 inch. Only the top and bottom pieces are 1/8 inch. The rest are 0.62. We cut this per the length specified on the plans. Then we pre-drill this off of the firewall, and this will act as a drill guide. We can then position it in place, clamp it with some C-clamps or vice grip clamps, and then starting at one end, just drill right on down, clecoing as you go to prevent any misalignment. This one's already been drilled in place. We'll go ahead and cleco it back down for you. So that's our start. The next thing we want to do is our 601B components. Now, they come as one piece. You'll find a structure piece that looks like that, and you have to split them in half. You then place those on the side here, and you line them up, and it actually will need both of them at one time placed on it so you can measure from this point to this point, and you want a nice contour line down here. As you're drilling this, you also want to drill the piece of angle that goes on top of it, since you actually drill through one into the other. So you'll cut a piece of angle to go in here, and you same thing, you drill and cleco as you go along. Now the angle that you'll cut, of course, hasn't had this notch cut out in it yet, and we'll get to that in a second. So we'll go ahead and cleco these down. And we do the same thing to this end up here. And you can see this end up here hasn't been notched yet. Okay, now that we've got those on, we've defined our bottom, defined our sides. The next thing we can do is our top piece, because it has to fit within the confines we've set up here. And again, it's a piece of 3/4 by 3/4 by 1/8 inch angle, and it's been pre-drilled first, then placed on the firewall and drilled through it, through the firewall into the wood below. Clecoing as you go. And this keeps everything nice and straight and aligned for us. Now that we've got that done, we want to go ahead and cut these two pieces that go in here. And they're just, again, out of the angle. Now these are the thinner angle. These are the 1/16 inch angle. So we go ahead and cut and cleco these in, and you'd start at one end and drill and cleco as you go along, keeping it all lined real nice for you. Now once you've got this done, you can concentrate on this crisscross area here. In doing the side pieces and the crisscross area, first you want to draw yourself a line corner to corner and corner to corner. From there, we'll put our center cross in, and it just fits in there. Like that. And again, you can cut these. Now there's a lot of cutting and fitting and trimming to these pieces. So the fit in the corners is not as important as one might think, especially if you fit them in the right place. Okay, so now we've got our first piece. This is a solid piece, corner to corner here, and you can see it doesn't go all the way up to the corner. It only goes up as far as this little 605C piece would allow you to go, because that'll fit right in there. We'll get to those in a second. Next, you want to cut and fit these pieces here in. And again, you can cut sort of a rough piece, a 1/2 inch too long, and then fit it in there and get your measurements and then get it trimmed so it fits in nice. Now almost all of these will get some additional trimming. Now the last piece is then cut and fit, and don't forget to reverse the flange edges on these. And if you look on your plans, you can see where they're reversed. They're not in the same direction. Now on the RV6A, you've also got the F6122 part that goes here, and that gets drilled and clecoed right in there. And what that's for is to hold your brake line on a 6A. Once you've got this structure in place, you're ready to start fitting your weldments in. And you've got your bottom weldment that goes like this, and your top weldment that goes in here. You've also got to fabricate your F601J, and this is your F601J, and you got to fabricate two of these, and they mirror each other, and they'll fit right in here like this. So now that you've got this much of the structure, you can go ahead and start fitting that. We've done this already over on the other side. I like to start in this area right here. It's one of the easier areas, if you can call it that. First you start with your 601H, and it goes down in the corner here. Then your 601G goes on top of it, and all that is building the area up so you can put your 601J down in here. Now, for it to fit down in there, you're going to have to cut a small notch in this piece of angle. So once you've done that, you go ahead and pre-drill your 601J. Then once all your pieces are down in there, you can go ahead and drill and cleco it right on down in there, and it'll sit in there just like that. Then we go up to the top here, and we start with our 601E, and the E goes right in there, and what that's doing is building up this area. Remember, these are 16th inch angle, and this is 1/8 inch, so this is building up that area. And then your 601D will go right on top of it, like that, and gets drilled and clecoed in place. Next, we like to come up here, working on this one weldment. Now, you start with a 601C, and your 601C will fit right in the corner here. And remember, this piece of angle comes up and butts up to the 601C. Then there's a second 601C goes on top of that one, and that's to build this area up to the 1/8 inch. Next, you want to put your 602 weldment on. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can do this now, or you can do it after the firewall is in the jig. I find it easier to do it now, but you need some alignment tools. And what the alignment tool is just a piece of angle, 3/4, 3/4, 1/8 inch, just like what your longeron is going to be. And it's simulating the longeron is what we're doing. And you're going to have to cut this and cut the end of this angle here to allow this to fit in there. So that'll fit in there just like that. Now what you want to do is adjust this weldment so that the longeron is even with the firewall. So when your skin is on there, you can rivet to the longeron and right to the end of the firewall, and there's a nice smooth fit. So again, you'll go ahead and clamp it and adjust it and get it in place. And then with a pre-drilled weldment, you drill down through the weldment into the rest of the firewall. And that one's on. Now you do the same thing with your 603. First you take a 601F, and you need to cut a notch in it because your angle will go through, and if you look on the plans it shows you exactly how to do this. That'll go there. Then another 601F goes on top of it. That gives you an 1/8 inch smooth surface. And again, you take your 603, and it's been pre-drilled, and you go ahead and set that on. And what I do is take your piece of angle, this is the actual angle that'll hook to it, and you usually have enough room that you can just clamp that on just like that and get your alignment just like they call for in the instructions. You want a smooth transition from your longeron here to your firewall edge. So once you've done that, you just go ahead and drill and cleco that down, clecoing as you go. Now the last thing, right here in the center, there's some little ties that go in here. And they look just like this. This one looks like this, and this goes right in here, and it's tying this angle to this angle. And then this one's actually bent a little bit, and it goes right in here like this, and it ties those two angles together. So once you've done that, this area is complete. And you want to just go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. One last thing to consider when building your firewall is if you're going to put a constant speed prop on. If this in fact is the case, this firewall is slightly inadequate for your purpose. What you need to do is put a box in the firewall. Now, this box is 8 inches wide and 10 inches high. It's 3 inches deep. And what this allows is room not only for your prop governor to fit in, which there isn't in a flat firewall, it also adds room for your oil filter, and you'll be thankful you put it on. Now, like I said, the box again is 8 inches wide, 10 inches high, 3 inches deep, and it's just a square box. We make these ourselves, and we've made them for other builders, but they're not terribly difficult. Again, made out of stainless steel. And where this goes is right in the center section, and it butts up against this angle right here on the edge of that angle, and you can see we've already drawn a line down here, and this box will basically fit right in there, but it fits from the back side up. So when you're all done, it'll look like that sticking on your firewall. It'll protrude out. This flange area goes, you insert this from the front of the firewall out, and this little flange here allows you to rivet this on, and actually you'll just back drill through the holes that you already have. So once you've got this laid out and drilled and clecoed on, you can go ahead and mark this square, and when you take this apart to deburr it and dimple it, because all these rivets are countersunk rivets, and they're countersunked with the smooth head on the forward side. And you can then cut this square out, insert the box, and back drill. Now, you don't want to rivet that box in when you assemble the rest of the firewall. The reason for that is that on the RV6 there's a bracket that goes right here that holds your rudder cable or rudder pedals on. And of course, with the firewall box here, you won't be able to squeeze those rivets in. So you'll just leave these clecoed in until you get that bracket riveted on, and then you can put your box in. It'll be in the jig, and it's not a bad job to do. It's in a nice firm area. So from right here, we'll go ahead and disassemble this. We'll finish up our other end here, deburr everything, dimple the stainless, countersink the aluminum to accept the dimple, and then we're ready to start riveting. A few last things to consider when drilling your firewall, especially when you're pre-drilling your angles. In areas where you're going to have another component on top of your angle, like here where your weldment will go, you don't want to drill your holes in your angle. So keep your pre-drilled holes back and leave these empty, and these holes will be drilled in with the weldments. And you want to do the same thing in all the corners, so you're not ending up with multiple holes, and this will just get you a nicer job. Also, you'll notice that this corner is square here. Well, once this is all clecoed together, you can lift it off the board and you can mark your round edge here and trim this corner. But don't worry about that until it's all done. Again, from here we'll go ahead and clean everything up, deburr it, dimple the firewall, countersink the aluminum angles. We will primer the aluminum, we will not primer the firewall, and we're ready for final assembly. Now that everything's been deburred and dimpled and painted, now we've only painted the aluminum parts and the metal weldments. We didn't paint the stainless steel components. We're ready to start assembling. Now what I like to do is assemble in the same order that everything was drilled in place. So what we've done, if you look down on the workbench here, you can see the stainless steel firewall, and you can see all the dimples in it. And remember, we're going to be the flush side on the forward side. Underneath, I've gone ahead and put a board to accommodate the flange and my back rivet plate. And most of this will be back riveted on. Now, when you're doing that, there's a couple things to just be careful of. We're going to start again with the bottom angle, and then we'll do the top angle. But you don't want to put the rivets in where your weldments are going to be. So you got to sort of be careful where you do put rivets in for right now. On this piece, we'll just put these 4 here in, and these 5, and these 4. The rest will be done with the weldments. So what we do is we turn it over, put our rivets in, and then I've already checked which ones we can do without interfering with anything. And if you put the wrong one in, it's no big deal, you just drill it out. By now you're probably accustomed to drilling rivets out. If you miss one that you could have put in, that's alright. You can always go back and put it in later when you're putting your other weldments on. Once the rivets are in, we use riveter's tape that we get from Avery Enterprises. We'll put a piece in there, cut it and put a little lap over so you can get it up. Now you can use masking tape, but not very well. You don't want to use Scotch tape, regular Scotch tape, because it'll just stick right to the rivet heads and makes a terrible mess. Out of all the stuff I've tried, this magic tape from Avery's works the best. And you can use it over and over again. We'll use these 3 pieces several times. Now that they're in, go ahead and flip it back over. Go ahead and position our bottom piece on, making sure that your back rivet plate is under there. Okay. Always wear hearing protection, and we're going to be using a simple, just your regular back rivet set, and we're just going to work our way right on across. Unless you got an unusually big rivet plate, you're going to have to slide it down eventually. Okay, and there's the bottom angle on. And all you do is flip her over, pull your tape off before you put your next set of rivets in, or they'll come bouncing out. And you'll feel you got a nice smooth surface there. From here we'll do everything like this, and like I said, we'll do the same order that we drilled them in. The next thing we're going to do is the top one. Now with the top angle, remember not only to leave the rivets out where your intersections of your other angles are and your weldments go, also leave the rivets out where your box is, if you are in fact putting a box in. If you're not putting the box in, then you can go ahead and do this, but remember the box will go in later. Next we're going to do the end angles. Now you can see this little red line here. What that is, that's some high temperature RTV that I put on underneath the 601B, and this is really just a sealant for fumes. It's not a fire protectant or anything. I'm just trying to prevent fumes from the engine compartment to come inside. So once we've put our rivets in, we put that on, we go ahead and we put our 601B on, and then our corresponding angle goes on. And again, we're going to use hearing protection and rivet them down. Next, we're going to put in our center angles. And again, if you're putting the box in, you don't want to put the rivets in where that'll hold the box on, or the rivets down here at your intersection. So we'll end up only putting 5 rivets in here. Next, we put in the long cross piece. The thing to remember here is your intersection, and also you've got this little tie piece that goes right in here, so don't forget to leave the rivet out where that'll go. Once it's in place, just rivet it down. Next, we put the smaller cross pieces on, here and here. We've also put some longer rivets in the 3 places here for the little tie piece that goes in here, and we put 3 longer rivets in there, and the tie piece will now go in. So we'll go ahead and rivet them down. After all the cross pieces are in, we can then go ahead and put our little brake line bracket in here. And this is on the 6A versions only. The 6 don't have this. Now from here, what we want to do is start putting all the little complicated little pieces. And again, it's just like before. We'll start with the simpler ones, the 2 here, and then go out to the outer weldment areas. Next, we go ahead and put the J, G, and H assembly on here. And if you can see this right here, I've got one rivet that's too long, and that's one that I didn't put in before. I'll just take that one out and put a smaller one in. So I'm just concerned about these right here. And I've put all my pieces in, stacked it all together, pushed it down. I'm ready to rivet this on. Next, we're going to work on the little brackets up here in the corner. And again, if you're putting the box in, the row of rivets along the box you don't want to put in, so we're actually only got 3 right along this edge to put in here. Next, we put rivets in the holes for the bottom weldments, and we go ahead and put all the little shims underneath, and we go ahead and rivet them on. Next, we put the 2 top weldments on. We put our 601Cs in, our little shims, and our weldment on top. And then we're going to back rivet it just like everything else. Last thing you need to do is put your little angle brace in there, and they can be just hand squeezed in, and your firewall's done, all except for your box. And this is what it'll look like with the box in place. And again, you don't want to rivet this in place because there's a bracket that goes right here that you need to rivet in first. But you want to go ahead and cleco it in, and you can leave it in there while you're working on it. And then once you've mounted this bracket, you can hand rivet the box into place. So right now it's just nice and solid in there. And if we turn around the front side, you can see what the front side looks like, and here's our box. and our prop governor will sit right about here, and our oil filter will sit right about there. It gives you lots of room. From here we'll go on to the rest of our bulkheads one at a time. 605 bulkhead is comprised of quite a few parts, and we'll show you what they look like. We'll start with the 605A, which is the bottom of the bulkhead, and you're going to want to notch it, and these notches will correspond. That's for your control tube to go through. On the left side you also want to cut a hole for your trim tab cable to go through. On the ends you have to notch it right here, and that's to allow for your 605D to come in. So they sit like this. Next, your 605B, which comes in the kit already made up, and you just need to clean this up. Then your 605Cs, you want to go ahead and cut your taper in on your end, and then mark the B and the C together for drilling. Now you'll notice on the plans they'll show you places where you shouldn't drill holes, and that's to correspond with your seat ribs tying in there, so I didn't drill those holes there. Next comes the 605Ds, and that's your side of your bulkhead, and that's also have a hole in it, and that's to allow for your rudder cable to go through, and the measurements where these holes go through are on the plans. And then you need a small notch up at the top right here, and that's to allow where your longeron will go in. Your 605Es are already made up. You just need to clean them up, and on all these parts you need to check their measurements, their lengths. They may be a tad too long and you want to cut them down or file them down. But your E will fit right inside here. Next is your 605F, which is the top of your bulkhead and the back of your seat brace. And again, that has to be notched so it allows the 605D to fit up in there. Your 605Gs you have to fabricate out of some angle, and they're not too terribly difficult, and these have already been pre-drilled. Then you want your H and I's, and your H and I's are just some little strips, and they'll come in two pieces, and you got to cut them in half. Once you've got all your parts laid out, and you finish fabricating them and got them all polished off, then we can go ahead and start with assembly. Now the assembly takes place on a flat workbench, and you want to go ahead and cover your workbench with some particle board or some plywood so you don't put a bunch of holes in your workbench. And that's what we've done here. And we'll sort of clean this off, and we'll start in a very orderly fashion of assembling this bulkhead together. We start by assembling our two 605A halves together. We've laid them on the bench, and they'll be assembled with a little splice plate. Now I haven't put holes in the bottom of the splice plate where rivets might interfere with the 605B. What you want to do is line the top of this up nice and straight, and I found one easy way is to use your 605F as a straight edge. You can just put that on like that, take a couple Cleco side grips, and just Cleco it right to it. Okay, that should maintain a nice straight line for you there. Then we're going to take our splice plate, and I've pre-drilled the splice plate, and we're going to drill right on through the pre-drilled holes into the 605A and into the wood, and we'll Cleco it right down. Next, we've taken the 605A off the board, turned it upside down, clecoed our splice plate back on to hold the assembly together, and we've laid out the 605B. Now, you should have drawn a little center mark to do all your measurements, and you want to line that center mark up with the center of the bulkhead. We've used some little cleco side grips to clamp it on, and we're going to drill this in. Now we're going to start the center, and we're going to drill so far out until we come to where our 605Cs would come in place, and then we'll drill them all together. So we'll just start here and work our way out. Clecoing as we go. Once the 605B has been drilled and clecoed in place, now we want to put our 605C on. You also have to cut a little spacer that'll go between the C and the B. For right now, we're going to put this on the end of it though. And what that allows you to do is line everything up on the end and then grab it with a cleco side grip and then line it up all the way down. When you have it in just right where you want it, go ahead and start at the innermost part of the 605C and drill that to the 605B. Now that your C and B have all been drilled and clecoed together, you can take your little spacer out. Your spacer will go right here on the very edge of your 605A between B and C. However, it won't go there now. That'll be drilled in place with the floor rib. So you want to take your spacer out and save it for later on. You want to go ahead and do the same thing on the other end. Then you can go ahead and take the 605B and C off. Flip your A pieces back upside down like they were before and cleco them back down to the board. Once you've re-clecoed the 605A halves back down to the board, I've also added a cleco here on the ends just to get it good and solid. The next thing you want to do is draw the outline of your bulkhead on the board. Now the reason for that is the bottom of your bulkhead is 42 inches and the top of your bulkhead is 42.5 inches. So you start by taking a carpenter square and just button it up against the bottom of your bulkhead with the center and get you a straight center line. Then you turn the square around and you come over here and you do the same thing, drawing a... Now you want to mark a line 22 and 13/16 from the bottom corner here straight up. So we've marked that line on both ends and drawn a line across the top. That marks the top of our bulkhead. Then what you want to do is measure 21.25 inches from your center line down this top line. That'll give you half the distance of your bulkhead at the top, and you do the same thing out this way. So that gives you your 42.5 inches. Then you draw a line with a ruler. You just take a ruler from your bottom edge up to your 21.25 inch line. Draw a line up both sides. And now you've got your bulkhead laid out on the board. Now you can start drilling the rest of your pieces on. What you want to do is start with your 605D, and that'll go right in here. Now I've already drilled the 605E piece, and I've placed that into the bulkhead, and I've also taken the H and I pieces, and they go on the outer edge, and that's to form a wedge in there. Okay, so I've already done that to this one. You can see I've got my notch there, got my H and I pieces in there, and that'll go right on there, and you just line it up right with the line. Now, a good practice is to go ahead and put both sides in. Also, bring your 605F in, and just make sure everything's lining up the way you think it should be lined up. I've got a little bit of a lip here, so I can clamp this 605D right down to the board. And you just want to check and make sure everything's lining up the way you want it to line up. Now, the reason for the notch here is that your longeron will come in here and fit like this. So you need this little bit of a notch there to accommodate that longeron coming in. So you've got a smooth surface all the way up. Now remember, your 605G will go in up top here. Now what I like to do is once I'm assured that my lines are good and everything's going to fit exactly the way I think it should fit, I'll go ahead and position this one here, get it lined up. I'll drill a couple holes here, and then I'll drill through my 605E through the D, and then that'll hold this part down. So we'll just start with one hole right now. Okay, that's got that one in place. Then I'll go to the other end and do the same thing. And I'm only drilling one. This is just to get it all in position. That way, if I'm off a little bit, I can always move it and drill in another hole. Once I've got the other side in position, then I'll go ahead and get the 605F and G's in position and drill them in. Once you've got just a few clecos holding everything in place, this is what it'll look like. We've just drilled one hole through the G and on down through the D and E on both corners. Now you want to go ahead and check your measurements, and you may have to trim your D and E to get your top of your bulkhead down to the measurement 22 13/16. But once you've got it like this, you can go ahead and double check your measurements, check it for square, and if you're satisfied with that, go ahead and drill the rest of your holes here and through your G. Also notice that down in here we've only put 4 rivets. There's some other holes that are underneath here from drilling our 605B, and we can take this out and cleco it together and back drill those holes. And then there'll be 2 holes off on the very edge here that'll be drilled in with this floor ribs. So once you got it where you like it and you're sure this is where you want it, then go ahead and finish your drilling. Once you've done this, you want to go ahead and take it all apart, deburr all your pieces. Also notice on the plans where your seat belt bracket goes, a couple of these rivets will be countersunk so they don't interfere with your seat belt mount. So check on the plans for those and go ahead and dimple and countersink as needed. Then when that's all done, you take this all apart, paint it, prime it if you're priming, and then you're ready to put it back together for assembly. We start the assembly of the 605 much the same way as we did the drilling. We're going to start with our 605A pieces, clecoed our splice plate in, and we're going to go ahead and rivet this together. We're going to be using a hand or a pneumatic squeezer rather than a hand squeezer on these big 1/8 inch rivets. Just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so you go ahead and you can complete riveting your splice plate in. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and assemble the 605 D and E's together. And you're just going to place them together, put a couple clecos in. Now remember, you don't want to put rivets in up top here because that's going to interfere with assembly later on to the rest of the spar. So we're going to put a couple clecos in, and we're just going to run some rivets down the side here. Now you can use the pneumatic squeezer. You can also use a hand squeezer on these. And you can just put the hand squeezer on. And give it a good squeeze. Either one will do. The pneumatic's just a little bit easier. So you want to go ahead and fill all these up, leaving the top rows open. And do that on both of them. And after you've got your D and E all riveted together, you want to go ahead and attach the D to your A. Remember not to put rivets in these bottom two holes because that'll interfere with your piece that goes on here. So we just run our rivet up through using our hand squeezer. And we go ahead and put these top two rivets in. Now that your D's are attached, next thing we want to do is go ahead and attach the 605B. Now, a couple things to remember. The rivets right here are going to be countersunk. That's so it doesn't interfere with your seat belt mounts. Also, we don't want to put any of the rivets up in here that'll correspond with this 605C right now, except for this very last one, which is underneath this little angle here. So we'll put that one in, but not these here. So the easiest way to do this is once it's all clecoed together, is go ahead and flip it over. Then we can go ahead and put our rivet in using our hand squeezer. Go ahead and squeeze in. So we'll go ahead and we'll do all those rivets. Then we'll flip it back over, click our 605C back in, and the same thing, go ahead and rivet that on. Once we've got the D's riveted in place, the only thing left is your top piece. We've gone ahead and clecoed that in, and it should just go right in. Before we did that, however, we did take and tap our H and I pieces in right here, and they'll just take a little tapping with a wooden mallet or something. Once the F has been clecoed in place, we go ahead and we've already pushed a rivet in from underneath, and we go ahead and just hand squeeze this in. Okay, and we'll do that on all of them, both ends. There's nothing real special here. Just make sure you get a nice set on your rivets. And we'll go ahead and do both ends, and then the bulkhead's complete. The last thing we have to do is go ahead and mount our seatbelt brackets. We've taken our seatbelt mounts, and they only come with one side drilled, so you have to clamp them together, use one as a pilot, and drill the other one. Then we've marked the center of our 605B, and we've marked up a line 3/8 of an inch, and this is on drawing 33, how to do this. Once we've marked it up the 1/8 of an inch here, we go ahead and clamp that on, position that and drill through. Of course, we've already pre-drilled our seatbelt brackets here, So we've drilled through there, and then we've mounted one. So that one's already drilled. Next we want to get a number 4 bolt and slide through our other bracket. Then we need to get a piece of 1/8 inch scrap of some kind, and what you're going to do is clamp them together. And line it up so the whole center of this hole is now lined up with that 3/8 inch line, and you go ahead and drill this one on. And put a cleco in it, and there, that one's done. Now you want to do the same thing on this side, and then that'll be your inboard mounts. Now to position your inboard mounts, you go ahead and measure 3 1/8 inches from your center over to your inmost mount. Then to get the position of your centermost outboard mount, from this line you measure over, and this measurement is again on plans 33, and you repeat the process. You go ahead and bar your bolt from here. Once you've got this drilled, now you don't measure your 3/8 of an inch here. Actually what you're going to do is just center that right on the center of your piece here, and make sure it doesn't protrude down through the bottom. So you put your 1/8 inch bracket in again, just like the inboard one. The only difference, like I said, is that on the inboard one you measure up 3/8 of an inch. On this one you're going to drill right dead on the center of your 605C, and you drill this one on in. And once you've done that, you do it on both ends and your 605 is complete. You're going to want to go ahead and take these mounts off, since they are steel, and prime them, mark them where they came out of, and set them aside for right now because they'll get in the way when you're putting your ribs on. But you want to mark them so you get the same ones back in the same place. From here we'll go on to the other ribs. The remaining ribs, or bulkheads for the 6 and the 6A, come in pieces. Some of them are in 2 pieces and halves like this, and what you have to do is put a little notch on the ends here. When I show you on the plans, you want to cut a little notch so they'll fit together. And don't forget to drill your holes for your trim tab cable and your rudder cables. On the 606, it's in 3 pieces. We have the 606 laid out here, and the 606, 607, 608 will all go together basically the same way. Basically just put a cleco through the tooling holes. That gets it pretty well aligned, and then go ahead and then drill your ends, and this being 3 pieces has corners, so you have to drill here, drill in over here, and drill here. But your alignment basically is through the tooling holes, and you can just, like we've done here, is drilled and clecoed it right on down to some boards. The remaining are fairly simple. You get to your 609, and it's just a 1 piece, and you just need to cut your lightning holes out. Don't forget your hole for your trim tab cable. Your 610, again 1 piece, cut your hole out, and then you've got your holes for your rudder cables going here. Your 611 comes in 2 pieces. Now if you're building a 6 tail dragger, it'll be a little bit different. And this, of course, we're building for a tri-gear, so you've got the 611A and B, and they fit together like this, forming the halves. Then you have to make your 611D for the tri-gear, or a 611C for the tail dragger, and these are on the plans. but basically these will fit right here in the corner like this. Okay, so you fabricate them and it all just sandwiches together. Again, you've got a tooling hole for your A and B that you can cleco them together. Go ahead and mark your notch and even do your drilling of your corners and the drilling of the C or D on. But that'll go together and look just like this. And basically when it's all done. Your 612 again is one piece, and all you have to do is clean this up. There's no holes in it. And if you're building a tail dragger, then there's two 612s that you sandwich back to back and have to cut a notch in here for your tail wheel. For a tri-gear, there's only one. So you clean that up. Also at this time you may want to fabricate some little 656 gussets, and they're rather small little gussets, and on plans 32 I believe they have a little drawing on there and shows you how to fabricate these little gussets up. So from here we're going to go ahead and drill all of our bulkheads, drill and cleco them together. Then we're going to take them all apart and primer them. You want to primer all these pieces, and the main reason for the primer, especially on like the 611, is moisture will get between these components here. So you're trying to prevent corrosion between the components. So we'll go ahead and we'll primer all these, rivet them together, per the instructions, and from there we're ready to go on, and the next step will be to make our main longeron and start jigging these up. The main longerons have a compound curve in them, and what we've done here is we've clamped the longerons together. Now these longerons are these 3/4 by 3/4 by 1/8 inch angle that hopefully you've been guarding ever since you opened up your wing kit. We've taken the two long pieces of angle and we've clamped them together like this. And we've used C-clamps about every 2 feet all the way along from end to end to clamp them all together. We've measured from this end down 29 3/4, and this is all on SK 48, sketch 48. We've clamped that into our vise, and now we're going to do our first bend by bending these apart. Now, what you do is you'll bend one out 2 1/4 inches. And you'll just apply some pressure, bend that out until it's 2 1/4 inches then, leaving the other one straight. Once you've got one out 2 1/4 inches, then you have to bend the other one 2 1/4, and of course then that'll be 4 1/2 inches. So you want to clamp this in the vise good, make sure it's clamped all up and down from the vise back so it's held tight. And you want to go ahead and just grab it and a nice straight pull. Okay, and then once you've done it, you get in here and you measure from the other one out 2 1/4 inches. Now that we've done the first bend, and you can see you measure from here to here, and it's 2 1/4 inches. Now we want to take this one and move it 2 1/4 inches. And of course that'll be 4 1/2 inches. So again, you just get a nice grip right here and just a nice straight bend, and you just bend it right on out. Once they're both completed, this is what they'll look like, and then you measure from inside to inside, and you'll have 4 1/2 inches. This completes your first bend. Now what you want to do from here is take this out of the vise, put a C-clamp right here at this junction so it doesn't separate, and then we go to make our first small jig that's going to be used for doing the second bend. The first thing you're going to do, on plans 22, you'll notice there's a line drawn. And it comes right along the bottom here, and there's some stations marked, 68, 55, 37. This is the line of your next curve. So what you want to do is take a pair of scissors and trim off the bottom of that, and any notes, we've gone ahead and taped the notes back on the drawings here. So that's the first thing you do. Once you've done that, you get yourself a piece of plywood Probably use the side rails of your wing box, and you transfer that line onto that plywood, and you can just slip it up underneath there. And now you transfer that curve on there, and you cut that curve out. You save both the male and female of that. Also mark your stations on there, because what you're going to do now is measure your longeron, and you'll match these stations up with the longeron. So your next curve is going to have to fit within there. The second part of your longeron bend is also done in the vise. We've clamped it in. We've left the C-clamps on, just like we did when we separated the ends, and that end's down here. We've marked our stations on here, and these stations correspond with the template that we've made. So what we want to do now is bend the longeron to fit within the template. Now this one's been partially bent, and we've tightened it up in the vise and then loosened it just lightly, and then we just apply some pressure. Then we slide it back a little bit. Again, adjusting the vise. You don't want it too tight. And apply a little pressure. Then you take your template and you put on there, and you take a look at it. Now originally there was about a 3-inch gap in here, and we've got it down to about a 1/2 inch now. So you want to work your way back and forth. Don't want to get too much of a bend in any one place, but a nice smooth curve, and until it fits right into the template. Once this is in, and of course we're bending both of them at one time here, and once it all fits in the template, then your longeron is ready to paint, and we're ready to start putting the longeron and the ribs in the jig. We start putting the bulkheads in the jig just like the plans call for. We start with the firewall. Now the first thing you need to do on the firewall is extend the top of the rail lines to the forward braces. From there you measure up 24.16 inches, and that's going to be the top of the firewall here. Remember also there's been a center line marked, and that center line's also marked on the jig. So you put the firewall in at your 24.16 inches, make sure that your two center lines meet, and then you go ahead and put a level on there, and you want to level it across, and at this point you're just using some C-clamps to hold it in. You also have to put some little wooden blocks in here to take up the room for this flange here, so you don't smash your stainless steel flange up. So once you've got it level and your center lines match, the next thing you want to do is go along in the back and put your level on the back and make sure that it's level, or it's plumb. So what you're trying to achieve here is that your firewall is in your jig, it's at the prescribed height, it's centered in the jig, and it's both level side to side and plumb top to bottom. Once you've got this, then you go on to your next bulkhead and you put it in place, and really what you're going to do is temporarily put all your bulkheads in place. After you've temporarily clamped all your bulkheads to the jig, next thing you want to do is attach your longerons. Now you start up at the firewall and attach it. Now this has already been drilled and clecoed, but you'd want to just clamp this in place and then temporarily clamp it all the way down. Then we start at the 604. The 604 sits on the longeron, and it takes a little engineering to clamp it on top of here. What you want to do now is put some bracing on the 604, and that's where a nice metal jig or a nice wood jig comes in handy. Where a metal jig faults is that you can nail bracing in wherever you need it, and you actually put a nail into your little wooden spacer that you have here, and this will help you steady it. We've also got a center brace in here which helps us steady it. So we center our 604 over the jig using a plumb line to find our center. And our first adjustment or measurement we want to take is going to be from our jig here, where our firewall resides, up to the rear of what would be the spar, or the rear of our little wooden block. and that's supposed to be 31 1/4 inches. So we get that. Then again, we can take our level, or you can use a plumb line, and you want this plumb now, so you adjust the bottom to make it plumb with the top measurement. Next, you place the 605, and you want to get it in a permanent place. And you start again by using your plumb line, and you just put your plumb line on your center line of your bulkhead, and when it's hanging straight, not moving, it should match up with the center line of your jig that you've drawn. Once you've got it centered, then you want to get it plumb, and again, you can either use a plumb line or a level. You want to put some little wooden blocks in or something to hold it so it can't wiggle. Put your longeron under it. Now, at this point, remember you have your 657 goes between your 605 bulkhead and your longeron, and this is on drawing 32. These 657s have been modified for a sliding canopy. If you're using the clamshell canopy, they're squared off on the end. But it goes right in between the bulkhead and the longeron here. Once you've got that set up, you want to go over to your wings, and you want to measure the distance between the innermost of your main spar and the innermost of your rear spar. And you want to jot that measurement down, because what you're going to do is make sure that you have that measurement now between your little wood spacer, which is simulating your main spar, and the innermost of your rear spar. And if it should be the same. If it's not, your wings aren't going to fit. So you get these lined up and you get that distance in there. Then you start with your outermost rib, your 615. Now the 615 will need some cutting on this edge to get just this right distance. And you go ahead and drill and cleco your 615 in. Also remember, there's a little spacer block that goes right here where your rear spar attachment is, and it'll be riveted all together when you rivet your rib in. Once you've drilled and clecoed your 615 in place, you double check this measurement. Once you've double checked it, you triple check it, because if this is off, your wings won't fit. Then from here, you simply go ahead and start walking your way right on across with the rest of your floor ribs. Now we've put the 615, 16, and 17 in place, and we're using our rivet pattern just like they call for on the plans. Just watch that these are 3/32 inch holes, and we're just going to drill and cleco right into our little wooden spacer for right now. The next one, the 618, is modified with an extra cutout in it, and this is to give room for your control tubes. That'll go in next. And then the 619 is modified even more. The 619 has the cutout for the control tubes. Then, according to the drawings, you mark where this will be split. You go ahead and make a doubler plate, and you drill and cleco your doubler plate on, and then it's drilled for bolt holes. And after you've done all your drilling, and then you cut your floor rib. And this is so you can get this section of this rib out to put the splice plates in for your spar. These will also be put in with screws and plate nuts, so this whole thing comes out. So you have to modify both of these, and this is your 619, and it'll go in, and you'll have two of these. Once we've got all our seat ribs in, and we've double checked our spacing between our rear spar and our front spar, then it's time to move on to the 606 bulkhead. Now the 606 bulkhead is probably the largest of the bulkheads. It's very thin and very flexible. So what I've done is taken a piece of plywood and use it as a doubler. If not, you're liable to actually break the bulkhead from it wiggling back and forth. It's been put in the jig, again using a plumb line to make sure it's centered. The spar has been brought over to it, and at first I just put a clamp on it. I didn't drill the longeron to the rib at first. Everything was just clamped in place. Once this is in place and centered, then we start putting our baggage compartment ribs in. And we start with the 625, and we go ahead and fit them in. And they'll go in just like that. Next, we want to check the placement of the F607. And again, we just use our plumb line. We hold it in the center of our bulkhead and let it hang, and it should come right down to the center of our jig. And like the others, we also check our height to make sure our height is proper. Clamp it in place. Then we want to put the component between here. We want to start with the F630, and it's a little plate. This is what it looks like, and it does not have the hole in it when you get it. And it goes right here, and the hole is the hole for your control tube to come through. And you want to go ahead and get that drilled and clecoed in place there. That goes like that. Then once the F630 is in, we go to the 629. The 629 has been built and has the piece of angle attached to it. And then it goes right in like this. Now from here, we want to check the rest of our bulkheads, our F6, 9, 10, 11, and 12, make sure they're in place. Then we want to go ahead and permanently clamp our longeron down to the jig. And you can see the little jig here that's used to do that. It's just a piece of angle, and it showed in the plans how to make this. And it's clamping the longeron down to the wood. There's a little spacer under here to cock it just ever so slightly. And of course it's a good lag bolt. And you want to put them all along here to hold the longeron in place. The longeron should be clamped to each rib that is, permanently in place, so it fits up tight. And then you clamp that down. Once you get down to the F612, remember that is going to be bolted right to your jig, so it's held very sturdily. And you can just drill and run some threaded rod or some bolts through. Now, a final check is to stretch a string all the way across your bulkheads. If the string touches each bulkhead ever so lightly, that's exactly what your skin's going to do. If you notice there's a big gap in one place or another place, that's what your skin's going to do, and it's going to buckle. So you want to check this, and you can adjust your ribs a little bit, either raise them or lower them. You don't want to move them side to side. They've got to be centered. So you're going to check the alignment to make sure you got a nice smooth alignment here. Once we've got our floor ribs and our seat ribs in, now we can finish building our structure up front here. If you're building a tail dragger 6, you will have two small gussets that go here and here. If you're building a tricycle gear, you have one large gusset, which is the F610-1. So you go ahead and you temporarily just clamp or cleco this in, and it goes right in like this. Now remember, all this has been pre-fitted that we're showing you. So you'll have a little more work to do. Once that's in, you want to go ahead and measure for your piece that goes across here and cut that out of the angle that's supplied. Now you don't want to put any rivet holes down in here per the instructions, because that's where your landing gear mount will be, and the rivets would interfere with the landing gear mount. So you go ahead and put that in. Attach it to the longeron. The next piece you want to cut is a small piece of angle that'll fit in here. Okay, and it's been notched in the back so it'll fit right into your mount. Then we've got our 684 gusset, and that'll get placed right in here and actually gets drilled to the firewall, to your weldment, and then across your piece of angle here. Now the best thing to do is do both sides at the same time. Cut this piece for this, fit it in, go do the other side. They should be the same length. Cut this piece to fit it in, go do the other side. Fit this gusset in, do the other side. Next thing we want to do is come down here for our other cross member. This has a little bit of a fancy jig on the end of it, and what you do is you drill a hole, cut a slot in, then you can take seaming pliers and bend this little dog leg in. And that'll fit right in here. And also attached at the firewall. Next you want to fit your F602 in. Now this takes just a little bit of cutting, because you got to cut the notch in for here and here to fit your angles. Don't forget to cut the hole in for your rudder cables to go through. And then it just fits right in there. Takes a little fitting to get it around the 610. There we go. And again, you want to do the same thing on the other side. And now the main structure of your skeleton is done here. There's some other angles that go across from your firewall that'll eventually be bolted into your wing spar that helps to stiffen your floor, but we don't put that in right now. So once this is done, and again you check all your measurements, Here's is fairly easy. There's already a notch cut into your bulkheads, and your stringers will just fit into that notch. When you're cutting this lower stringer, make sure you leave a little bit because it'll actually attach to a piece that comes off here. But you just fit it into the notch. You might want to use a straight edge on your bulkhead to keep your bulkhead straight as you're fitting your stringers on. And then when you get down to the lower end here, you do have to notch it a little bit to go around your 611 bulkhead and down to your 612. You go ahead and do all three stringers here, and then do the same thing on the other side. And then we do the last skeleton part, which is to come up along the baggage compartment. There's some pieces in there we have to put in. Next we take our F620 armrest, and we need to attach a small piece of angle onto it. And then we go ahead and fit our armrest in. Make sure when you fit the armrest in, on this end of it, you cut enough space to allow for the fit of the bulkhead. Remember, there's a doubler plate that goes over the bulkhead that has to clear that armrest. Then we come back to the baggage compartment. And we put our F622 in. That gets fit in right here, and that's fairly loose for right now. Then we bring our F624, and that gets fit it in. And drilled to our F622. Then the last piece, or it gets fitted to our 623, and then the last piece is our 622, and that gets a notch cut in it that interlocks with a notch that's in the 624, and they come in together. And this is where this ties into this one stringer that we have here in place. And we're done. Again, you want to do the same thing on the other side. This little notching arrangement just takes a little cutting and fitting, a little trial and error, and you can get it fitted in pretty good. Once we're to this point, you want to go ahead and take it apart and deburr it, dimple it, paint it like we've got it here, put it all back together, and it's ready for final riveting of just the skeleton. And then from there, we're ready to start our skinning. Before we start our riveting process, here's a few hints and things to consider. First, you want to go ahead and put your 4 bolts in. Make sure you put them with the bolt heads down, which actually will be up when the thing's right side up. Then you want to put just your last rivet in, both your angles. You don't want to put your other rivets in, and this rivet needs to be countersunk. These other rivets will be done when the skin goes on. Next, where the 602 overlaps your F110-1, you're going to have to make a little spacer, and that'll go in here, and that'll just take up that little bit of gap that's in there, so when you rivet your skin on there, you won't get any pucker. Also, all these holes in both of the angles will be left open, and they'll be riveted on with the skin. You do, however, want to, at the very end, again, put a single rivet, and that's just to help hold this angle in place, and also put a single rivet here and here to help hold your 610-1 in place. For you 6/8 builders, remember this angle here needs to be trimmed. You might as well do it now so that your landing gear mount can fit in there. And you can do it now or do it later, it's just easier to do it now. On the forward side of the 604, you want to countersink these holes here. So you put your number 3 rivets through to give you a flush fit here so you can slide your wing spar in. However, the inner 2 most ribs, the ones that you modified with the bolts, you do have to put plate nuts. The holes are in a position so that they won't interfere with the wing spar. Drilling plate nuts in is very simple. All you need to do is cleco your plate nut in the 1/8 inch hole that you drilled originally. Then using your longer drill bit, I'm using a 5-inch one here, you just back drill through your plate nut. Now you have the exact holes that you need to mount your plate nut. You'd want to go ahead and then on the back side of these countersink for your rivets. Before you put your plate nut on, you'd go ahead and use a larger drill bit to open the hole up to allow your screw to come through. And then you can just rivet your plate nut right on. This is a good time too also to go ahead and drill your longerons into all your bulkheads, and you do this with a 3/32. You're also going to need to countersink this now to receive the 3/32 countersunk rivet. You'll have trouble getting a countersink tool in there, so what you can do is if you have an Avery deburring tool, it has a longer shaft, and you can actually get in here like this and that's countersunk almost perfect, and you can go ahead and rivet these on now. Another thing that you might want to think about now, because it's easier now than later, is your static system. If you buy VANS static kit, he has you put your static port approximately right here. You want to then run your static line up through your 606 bulkhead, right along the longeron, through your 624, through your 605, through your 604, and up to your instrument panel. In doing this, your static port is the lowest part of your static system. So it's easier to do this now while you can still pull these components off and drill your holes for your tube to run through. Remembering now that the airplane's upside down, your static port's right around in here, and it's going to go down through your 606, through your 624, down through your 605, along your longeron. It'll go through both sides of your 604 bulkhead and then come out here. So it's easier to drill these holes now. While you're also checking holes, make sure that you've put holes in all your bulkheads for your rudder cable to pass through. It's not only got to go through your main bulkheads, but your 624 and your 602 bulkhead. So you may want to just sort of follow the holes and sort of think about putting your rudder cable and make sure that all the holes are in place. However, you don't want to rivet the right side 627 rib in right now. As you can see, you've got your one rib here. This is your 627. These holes will be used for the 628, which will go down this way and is used to hold your aileron bell crank or your elevator bell crank. So you don't want to put these rivets in right now. One other good hint that I like is a lot of people ask, how do you get underneath this jig all the time? It's only a foot or two off the floor. An automotive creeper really helps a lot. Just go ahead and put it down on the floor, lay on it, scoot underneath, you're under there. Use it to get out too. It'll save you a lot of time and backaches. We start our skinning just like they say in the manual by starting back here on the tail cone. Now the tail cone is rather heavy, it's 040, so it's going to take a little working to get it to the shape you want, but you start by just putting it on, getting it down good and snug, and then you can look on the ends and see how it fits. Then you want to go ahead and shape it to get it to fit nice and tight. Then once it's all put in, what you want to do is go ahead and cleco it. We're using cleco side grips to hold it in place. And then from the underside, use a marking pen and mark where all your ribs are. So basically you're gonna mark this, you're gonna mark where all your pieces are here, and transfer that onto the skin itself. Then you back drill your skin, and then you're ready to put it back on and drill through the skin into the ribs. You can also mark the edge here, any trimming that may need to be done from the underside, and then you can trim it when you're ready to put it back on for drilling. Once the tail cone's been trimmed, and you'll have a little excess sometimes along the side here, especially along the front. Now the back parts you don't want to trim right now. You'll trim all that later after your side skins and all on. You'll trim them all together. We've gone ahead and pre-drilled using the marks that we made on the inside, a little map that we made, and pre-drilled. Now what we want to do is start in the center, and we want to drill a hole here and here and here, and then work down and out to smooth our tail cone down good. Now before you do this, you want to get a good fit, and I can look through the holes here and I can see where the rib underneath is butted right up against the tail cone. If you don't have a good tight fit, you got to work it a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and drill a few of these in and get started. Putting a cleco in every one as you go. And once you're done drilling and clecoing your skin on, this is what it'll look like. Now we go ahead and leave it on here for now. We'll take it off and debar it later. From here we'll go on to our aft bottom skin. Now that we've got our F679 tail skin in place, we go ahead and put our F678 rear bottom skin in place. Now basically we just set it on the skeleton, center it up at the forward edge we've evened it up with the 610 bulkhead, or the 606 bulkhead. The skin goes from the 606 all the way down to the 610. Once we've got it evened at the 606 and clecoed in place up there with some cleco side grips, we come down to the 610, center it up. We've also put some of these cargo straps in, and we've just lightly tightened them up. If you tighten them up too much, you can actually bend your stiffeners and your stringers. So we've put everything in place, and it's held in place. Now we'll go underneath and again draw where our stringers and our bulkheads are, so we know where to drill. We'll then take this off, and using the little map that we've drawn on there, we'll go ahead and figure up our rivet spacing and drill our skin on. Now that we've drilled the skin, we've placed the skin back on the skeleton. We've looked underneath and made sure our lines all lined up with our skeleton, so the skin's right back where it started. And now we're going to start drilling it in. Now what we'll do is we'll start in the center. We'll start on this rib and this one. Okay, and we'll work out and we'll work up this side here. When you get down to the far end, we didn't drill these holes because they're already drilled in the 679, the F679 piece. So we'll back drill those, and we'll drill along here. And we'll do the same thing along here when we put our side panels on. When we put the side panels on, we'll back drill through these holes. So for now, we'll just start, and you start from the center and work out. And once the 678 skin's all drilled and clecoed on, this is what it looks like. Now, what we've done is when we drilled the skin originally on the workbench, we used a 3/32 inch drill bit. Then when we back drilled, we used a 41. Of course, all up in here was drilled through the skin first and in. Now, your few rivets down in here, of course, remember, were back drilled through your 610 and up through your 679 tail cone and then on up. And an easy way to do that is just have somebody hold a piece of board on top of that skin and push your long drill bit up through. From here, we're ready to start putting the rear side skins on. We start by placing the side skin on the side. Now we've taken this row of clecos out of the bottom skin, and because it won't go on with them there, and those holes will be back drilled. We've put the side skin on using our shipping straps. We've gone ahead and strapped it down, not too tight that we bend something on the other side. On the other side, we've placed a board along the skeleton so not to bend the stringers. We've placed it, there's an overhang at the far end. We've got some side grips here holding it, and we've got it snugged down pretty tight. Now what we'll do is we'll go around the back side again and draw our little map where everything is, where we want to put our rivets, and from there we just drill just like we did the bottom skin. And once you get inside here, you can see the little piece of wood that we've got running here so we don't crush anything with the shipping straps. We just want to draw along our stringers both sides of the ribs. Down along the longeron. Once you've got your little map drawn on the inside of your skin, we're ready to take our skins off, draw our rivet spacing. Remembering you don't have to draw spacing up on the top part here because you're going to back drill through your bottom skin. Figure up your rivet spacing, drill your skin, and put it back on. Now, the accuracy of this method is how accurate your skin is in place. So you want to double check and triple check. Make sure your skin's pulled up nice and tight and it's in place, because your map is going to, show if it's in place. If it's not in place, your map's going to be off too. So from here we go ahead and do this side, and once we've drilled and clecoed this side on, we go ahead and actually do the same thing to the other side. Once you've drawn your map on the skin, we go ahead and we take it off, put it on the workbench to finish drawing our rivet spacing. Now, a couple things you want to keep in mind. Along the top where the longeron is, which is actually on the bottom because the plane's upside down, calls for a 1-inch spacing. For right now you want to put a 3-inch spacing, so you can go ahead and put the skin on, but there's an overlap skin that goes over it, so you don't want to drill all those holes right now. Also, as I took the skin off, I used a red marker and I marked along here where I did not want to mark rivets, where I was going to be back drilling, just so I didn't mistakenly mark holes there and drilled them. Also, this is the time that you want to mark your inspection plate. Now, your inspection plate goes down in this part of the skin right in here, and it really doesn't give you a very big hole. But what you need to do is cut yourself a little template, and this is the size of the cover, and then this is your reinforcing ring, and they'll be put in there. But what I like to do is just draw that on there, and then when I put it back on for drilling, I can look and make sure that spacing is fine before I actually cut the hole out. The hole's rather small, so I found it's best to put them one on each side so you can work through. Once it's all laid out, then you're ready to start your drilling. Now that we've drilled our skins, we've put it back on, again putting our shipping straps back on and pulling it up nice and tight. We've even taken some little wedges to help push it up against the stringers and the ribs. Now, we've gone on the back side and checked to make sure that in fact the skin is where we wanted it. Make sure our marks all lined up. We've even, down where the inspection plate, we've looked where we've drawn our inspection plate on the skin and decided that's a good spot for it. So what we want to do now is start our drilling. Now, the way I like to do it is start on this stringer right here in the center and work out. Once I've got that in, then I'm going to start working up, and I want to work it up to push the skin up to get any wrinkles out. Push it up and over, just like you did with the wings. And then once that's done, we'll go down and do the bottom here. So that's the pattern. You want to make sure you don't have any wrinkles to start with, and that's the purpose of the straps, to try and pull everything nice and tight. Not too tight, because you can bend it or wrinkle it in the process. So we're going to start here in the center, work our way out using lots of clecos. Now that we've got this center stringer all drilled and clecoed on, we want to start going each rib up one at a time, all the way down, and slowly stretch the skin up and around till we get to this next stringer. So that's what we're going to do now, slowly go up and around, and it takes a little walking back and forth. Okay, now that we've gone up our bulkheads to our next stringer, now we want to start again in the middle of this stringer and work down towards the ends. Again, working any kind of wrinkles. There shouldn't be any wrinkles. These skins, as they come from VANS, are really nice. But we want to get, you know, this stringer all drilled in. Now, when you get down to the tail cone, of course, you're going to have to back drill these, and that's going to take two people. You need one on the inside drilling, one on the outside applying some pressure to keep everything flat. So we're just going to start here and work our way right on out. And if the strap's in the way, don't worry around, just go around it for now. And again, back and forth. Now we have to finish up along here drilling, and we're going to back drill these because the holes are already in the tail cone. So to do that, we use a 90-degree drill, and I'll be on the inside and Becky will be on the outside with a block of wood just holding against here so I don't push the skin out. Now you want to use something to protect her hands because the drill bit's going to pop through here. So I'm going to go around here and we'll start drilling. Ready? And just like before, after each hole, she's put a cleco in it. Yeah, I'll get to it in a minute.
The flame from there.
Now that we've got this stringer all drilled and clecoed, we want to finish going up over the ribs. Now here's where you want to be careful because you can really put some inherent buckles in the skin just by where you place your hand when you're drilling. So you want to first make sure you can look through the holes and see that your skin is contacting the ribs good. And just, again, just each rib one at a time, work your way up and over. We'll do these three here, and then we'll go and do the ones in the tail cones because they have to be back drilled again. So we're just going to start right here, start in the center one. And work our way right on up and over. Now that we've drilled up the remaining edge of the bulkheads, all that's left is back drilling the seam here that goes through the stiffener and up through the bottom skin. So this will be all back drilled, and again we want to start in the center so if there are any wrinkles or buckles we can work them out. So we're going to start right here. Again, Becky will hold a block of wood on so I don't drill her hand, and we'll just work our way to side just like we did the others. Yeah, all but the last compartment. You got plenty of room to work inside here.
You know how many miles?
And once you've back drilled this edge here. That's the worst of it. Now to finish up, we want to drill down the rest of our bulkheads to the longeron, and we'll drill all the ribs down one hole at a time, each rib, until we get it on down. And then we'll go ahead and drill into the longeron. Now the spacing on the longeron calls for 1 inch, but the book recommends only putting them every 3 inches for now, and you'll do the rest when you put the turtle deck on. So from here we're going to go ahead and drill down and then drill it into the longeron. And after, with the help of a friend or your construction partner, you've back drilled your clecos in this final edge here. This is what it looks like. You can try it, and you shouldn't have any oil canning. It ought to be a nice tight, no wrinkles up in here. Now one last little detail is the back part of the skin here by the tail cone. Now per the instructions and even the drawings of the skin, you should trim your side skin down in this fashion here and take this little wedge off. Now I prefer not to do that. If you got a good fit on your tail cone and a real good fit on your skin, you can continue to wrap the skin right on up and around and continue your rivet line down. Now the only thing this buys you is you no longer will have this seam here, which you may not want, and if looking from the side of the plane, you've got a nice smooth finish rather than that seam. So it's going to add a little weight of this skin, but it gives you a nice smoother finish here and maybe a little more strength in the tail cone section itself. Now that our rear, side, and bottom skins are drilled and clecoed in place, we'll leave them there, because the skins forward of them, both the side and the bottom, will overlap the rear skins. From here, we'll go to our center bottom skin. It's actually not a single part skin, it's a two-piece skin, and it goes from your 606 bulkhead clear up to your 604 bulkhead. Now the drawings show you to do some trimming. These skins overlap at the 615 floor rib, and this is where your wing will butt up against it, and this skin will actually be screwed down against the bottom of your wing to give you a smooth surface on the bottom of your airplane. However, it does get trimmed off in this area here. Now I don't do my trimming right now. I'll go ahead and place my skins in place, duct tape them down or strap them down to hold them, and then again I'll get my pen out and mark my floor ribs from the underside, take the skins off, mark for drilling, drill them, put them back on. I will mark the skins where I think it should be trimmed, and I'll compare that to the drawings and work something out, but there's places that it has to be trimmed where it has to be trimmed. But once the skins have been drilled, I'll go ahead and put them back on, drill through my ribs just like I did everything else. Once drilled and clecoed in place, this is what the skins will look like. Now I've double checked my markings for around the 623 to the plans and trimmed accordingly. The easiest way to start on these is to put your left side skin on. Now where your left side skin overlaps the right side skin, that rivet line was not drawn on the left side skin. That'll be drilled on the left side, or on the right side skin, and drilled through the two of them. How we help to keep it flat is, once we've got the skins in position, is actually put some weight on here. We use some dumbbell weights or bricks wrapped in cloth, something to protect the aluminum would work, but you want to put a bunch of weights on here, and that gets it nice and flat for you. Again, the rear splice line, only the aftmost holes were drilled in the skin, because the forwardmost of the splice line back here is actually back drilled through the 606 bulkhead and the rear floor skin. You start by drilling in the center here, and you just start drilling and expand out in all directions, keeping it as flat as possible. And once the left side skin is on, minus this line here where they meet, then you do the same thing to the right side skin. Once you've got it drilled and trimmed and in place, then we're ready to go on to the forward bottom skin, the F672. Next skin to go on is the 672, which is one-piece skin, goes in this area here. Now there are some floor stiffeners that go in the 672, and they're pieces of 063 angle, and there's two go in the center and then one to each side. And these actually will attach to the firewall at one end and eventually to the main spar at the other end. The rivet spacing for the 672 is on drawing 36, and it gets a double row of rivets in this area. Of course, the forwardmost row is back drilled through your floor skins, and it gets a double row of rivets up in this area attaching it to the firewall. Now, because you have to take these clecos out here, what I do is put a small 3/32 inch cleco countersunk right here, and that's just to hold this piece of angle to the 610-1. You should have some miscellaneous rivets in this area here to hold it, but it just basically sits right down on top of there. Again, from the inside, you'll mark where your firewall goes for that line of rivets. On drawing 36, we'll show you where your aft line of rivets goes. Also, these rivets in here aren't 3/32, they'll actually be 1/8 inch rivets that are back drilled through, and I won't mark the rest of these rivets for right now. I'll back drill these, but these I'll probably mark when I put my side skin on, since you're going to have to drill back through all two layers. So we're ready to just go ahead and put the skin on and start our marking. There's some little jigs you'll have to use to hold these pieces of stiffener to here, and they're just very simple little devices, and it actually just gets clecoed into your little wooden block here. And once we've got them temporarily in place, I'll show you what they look like.